Diana, did you talk at all about the Discord issue that seems to be still re rearing its ugly head?
No.
Can you
So
just mention it now?
yeah, we've heard that for some people the Discord link didn't work or that it expired. I'm new to hosting the Discord. Like I'm not an expert in that platform, but I did set the link to not expire. But when I went to check it, it had auto corrected for the link to expire. So that might be the issue. I unexpired it. If you have any issues, just email me and I'll send you the invite link. But you haven't missed much. There's not been much activity. So if you are on it, feel free to ask questions, share insights, and all those things.
Yeah. I think that what I may have missed Diana saying this is that the settings just seem to change of their own accord, own Discord. So there might be an issue of if you get a link that you need to just sign up ASAP before the invite expires. Um, that might be the best way to get over it. So today, it's predominantly me again. Delighted to have Diana here, who I always will invite to join in the conversation at any point. Because of my Wi-Fi issues, I'm in a shared space. Well, there's nobody here, but it's not the most ideal teaching space in terms of practicals. But there are a few times when we will get up from the computer screens and do stuff, and you just may not have the best shot of me. But I think we'll be able to manage just fine. So today, well, let me ask the question, and I know because I can see how many views there have been of any particular video. So I know not everybody has watched the video on the brain through life, but would you just give me a wave if you have, so that I kind of know where I'm at in terms of peeps? Okay, so I'd say just you're a bit through. So close to half, I'd say, or maybe a few more. Thank you, folks. Thanks very much. So that is and that you also watched the bit on the limbic system. Did anybody? I see most more people watch the thing on the limbic system. Somebody else is just going. Saffron's going. Oh God, I didn't watch anything. Don't worry. Um, the limbic system and the homunculus was the little short section, but we will refer to homunculus again, and I will be talking about the limbic system again for sure. But do please watch both videos. It is part of your required hours to watch those two videos. They should have been, the limbic system was the bit tagged on from what I didn't get to on week one. So just to reiterate, my primary intention in this training is the protection of the brain for the future from symptoms of dementias, particularly Alzheimer's dementia. There are five, or probably more, but there's approximately five types of dementia. But the predominant two are Alzheimer's dementia and vascular dementia. Vascular dementia is, as you will go, oh yes, of course, that makes sense. It's about the vascular system, which is part of the cardiovascular system. And the vascular is referring to arteries and veins. And vascular dementia can occur because of deterioration of blood vessels and a lack of blood supply to the brain. It can also occur from an insult to the brain, like stroke or hemorrhage. So thinking of basically the or blood clot, for example, obviously, which is what a stroke is essentially. So thinking of it as a sort of physiological issue that creates cognitive issues. And Alzheimer's is also has physiological components that creates cognitive issues, but a kind of a broader set of risk factors. And the approximate statistics we have currently, and things change all the time, is that approximately 75% of dementias are Alzheimer's. The obvious route for hoping to prevent vascular dementia, as I described it, you might be thinking, well, it's more of a physiological route. It's about protecting particular cardio health. So heart health is massively, did I press record? There's my brain, thank you. Heart health is massively important for all types of cognitive issues, but obviously sounds like a very direct route for supporting ourselves in the avoidance of vascular dementia. And we can never protect ourselves against everything. Without question, we can never prevent ourselves from getting pretty much anything. And one of the things that I really want to bring forward when I'm teaching yoga for health conditions is that it is very unlikely your fault if you get a thing. That everybody gets something. And the downside to life is that it is finite. And this body is not designed to live forever, not even designed to live for 200 years. But I think that in the holistic world, the yoga world, there can be a bit of a sense of like, well, if you do it properly, nothing will happen to you. You won't get osteoporosis, you won't get dementia, you won't get cardiovascular risks. And if you do, what did you not do? What did you do wrong? What did you not perform? And because I have worked with so many people with a whole raft of issues, and then you're looking at some of them and you're thinking, there is nothing this person could have done more fabulously when we read about the 4 pillars of health or the 5 or the 6 pillars of health. They did everything, quote unquote, right. And that sometimes it's the luck of the draw. You know, one of the things that I feel is really important as teachers is to allow ourselves to be honest about our own struggles. And I used to pretend that yoga didn't hurt my back. And then I had a sore back, and I would pretend when I was teaching with my back in spasm that I wasn't in pain. I'd just do movements that didn't trigger my back spasm. And then I noticed that if somebody did something to their back in a yoga class, they would blame themselves and not the yoga. They'd be like, oh, well, it wasn't the yoga. And there is this sort of air in yoga, I think, that we're not allowed to criticize it, that we're not allowed to consider that it might do some harm. If, you know, depending on the body, depending on the practice. So when I recognized that people were starting to think I was superhuman, one of the aha moments for me was when I slipped on black ice and I fell absolutely backwards, flat onto the back of my entire body. And then I got up and I was a bit like, holy moly, nothing broken. I'm okay, carry on. The next day I was teaching in the morning and I was in spasm in my whole back body because of the shock. And I told them what had happened. And somebody said, but you can't fall, you're a yoga teacher. And I thought, this is the kind of magic that's ascribed to yoga, that they think a yoga teacher won't slip on black ice. And so what I'm trying to say here is that neither you nor your students can ever be protected from everything. And that doesn't make you or your students bad yogis. I'm sure that there are people here who have conditions that they didn't expect to get, and that at some point they thought, well, if I just carry on doing yoga, I'll be fine. I would put my hand up there big time about osteoporosis, for example. So yeah, I do tend to go tangential a little bit as I teach, and then I try to bring it back to the nub. The nub is we can't prevent everything, but there's a lot we can do with certain things that is helpful. And that's what I'm bringing. That's my part, or the biggest part of my contribution to this training is about helping to reduce our risk factors for the symptoms of Alzheimer's dementia. And at the same time, keeping us neurologically and intellectually interested in our practice and adding variety to our practice, which also supports us physiologically. So the sameness of a yoga practice is not optimal for your bones, your muscles, your pelvic floor, your brain, your fascia. Every bit of you likes variety. And so while we stimulate the brain with the intention of trying to reduce the risk of cognitive decline, we are also ticking a lot of really interesting boxes. So I'll be talking about, and in the manual, you'll see things like the benefits of strength. That's why there is a sequence there that's all about isometric contraction. There's a sequence that's all about dynamic muscular action. There's a sequence on vestibular actions, which you might not think of as directly potentially protective from Alzheimer's, but actually research shows that vestibular training can reduce cognitive decline. So another important thing to remember is that while we can't fix everything, everything is positively supported by what we're offering here. Diana's work supports the nervous system on mobility and pain, but support of the nervous system reduces inflammation, which reduces risk of cognitive decline, which reduces risk of cardiovascular issues. The work I do is primarily to stimulate the brain, but it also helps regulate the nervous system. It also helps strengthen the pelvic floor. It also helps, etc., etc. So I call this a biotensegrity in terms of the actions we are taking having links to everything. What I hope to do is to offer you quite a lot, but in the end, to help you come to a point where you go, actually, it's quite simple, really. I just need to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And actually, that's kind of a really big addition to the value of my classes. You are likely to feel a bit overwhelmed by a lot of new learning. And as I said on the first day, choose what to take with you and what to let go, but also give yourself time. Maybe for a year, I'll just remember this thing that Diana said and that thing that Niamh said. And then next year you might go, ooh, I'm going to play with those eye exercises now. So be patient because it's pretty big. What would you say, and you can either type it in the chat or unmute yourself and speak. What would you say are the main needs of the brain? And you can talk on any level. So it could be physically, mentally, emotionally. What would be the main needs of the brain? What does the brain need to keep ticking over?
Fat and
Stimulation,
oxygen.
variety. What'd you say, Trisha?
Fat and oxygen.
I still can't hear that. Sorry.
Oh, I'll put it in the chat.
It's just that I can't make it out, Trisha. I'm hard of hearing, so it's probably just my hearing aids distorting. And you're at the echo of your room.
Oh, I put it in the chat, but I said fat.
Yes, fat. Oh, yes, I see. Yes, absolutely. Glucose, yes. Oxygen, yes. Blood flow, yes. Nutrition, yes. Stimulation, yes. Rest, yes. Oxygen is big. Variety is one of you reading that out. Novelty, exactly. Ability to make accurate predictions, exactly. And can anybody, apart from Diana, tell me why ability to make accurate predictions is important? Ah, somebody did already, but I'll see if anybody else picks it up. Why is the ability to make accurate predictions helpful for the brain? Safety! Exactly. So on a physiological level, water, hydration, exactly, food, oxygen. And then you could say on glucose is part of the food piece. You could say that in some ways novelty is like food for it. It's almost physiologically important, but it's also sort of neurologically important as well. So novelty, new learning, and the ability to make accurate predictions is what gives the brain its sense of safety. And that is its number one priority. Your brain's spending a lot of time asking, is it safe? So I have it down to three words: safety, fuel, activation. So the fuels come in different shapes and contents. Activation can come in a huge number of ways, and safety can also come in quite a large number of ways. And the great thing is that activation also supports safety, and fuel also supports safety. And fuel means breath, nutrition, and hydration. Hydration is immensely important. Our breath and our nutrition stimulate or help support the production of something called ATP. Has anybody heard of ATP? And does anybody know what it is? And you're very welcome to either unmute because it might be a longer answer than you can type. And you might not have the terms for it. You might have sort of a sense of what it is, and that's okay if you don't feel that you can explain it. The best description, yes, thank you, Natalie. I was the same. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, I don't know who that is. SCWAL. I'm so sorry. You
I
can
mean,
unmute yourself.
it's yeah. Am I unmuted?
No, you're unmuted now.
Yeah, okay, sorry. It's Susan, and I still haven't fathomed out how to change it, and you changed it for me in session
I'll,
one. Sorry.
I'll do that now. It's nice to be able to see who
Techno
it is.
challenge. Yeah. I believe it's adenine triphosphate, is it? And it's something to do with the energy in the body, how the body produces energy. That's
Yeah.
my sort of very basic theory. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's all we really need in a way. And then with Trisha's what's the word? Trisha's specificity is energy for cellular processing. So it's a cellular energetic currency was the best description that I had of it. It's like what the cells buy and sell in order to have enough energy. And then I kind of like think of it as being minted, being made actually by cells. And there are lots of things that get in the way of ATP production. There is some evidence that ATP production is reduced in perimenopause. But does anybody happen to know other ways that ATP might be interrupted? And it's particularly important in the brain. So that's why we're going into it in a little bit more detail than some other sources. And you might find that one of them is a classic for pretty much every dysregulation or every threat to the body or the brain. So one of them is stress. Stress can interfere in the production of ATP. Another interesting, I hadn't heard about toxins, Trisha, but I know that you are up on some of this stuff, so I'm going to go with toxins. But have a little look just in case, folks. The other one is actually really interesting because it refers to some of what we're going to be doing here, which is lack of activation. So lack of activation of the brain may interrupt or reduce the production of ATP. Also, Rebecca, I hadn't heard about degenerative disease, which is a big umbrella term, and certainly I would imagine that degenerative disease of the neurology would probably create issues there, but I don't know for sure regarding other areas or what particular degenerative disease would have that that effect. Another really important thing that gets in the way of ATP, and maybe part of why this is a big, hugely implicated in cardiovascular health, but also brain health issues and Alzheimer's, is dysglycemia, which is blood glucose dysregulation. So blood glucose that your clients and students will more usually call blood sugar is implicated in a lot of disease, or blood sugar dysregulation is implicated in a lot of disease. And it is the precursor to what you may have heard of called insulin sensitivity. And insulin sensitivity is the precursor for type 2 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease, dementias, and all sorts of other vascular issues, among many other things. So blood glucose regulation is immensely important when we're looking at long-term health of all systems, and in particular the brain. Does anybody know what can help us regulate blood glucose? You can type movement, absolutely. Fiber, yes, movement. Anything else? Nutrition, and I'll go into that a little bit more. I haven't done any work in herbs for blood glucose regulation. Ree, if you have some information and you are interested in sharing that. Yes, sufficient good fats, Hilary. So omega-3s and specifically, Harinder, absolutely. Sleep is a big one for blood glucose regulation. Fasting would have probably, Natalie, mixed results. I'm kind of, oh, berberine, never heard of it, Trisha. Fasting, I'm kind of concerned about. I might just talk about that a little bit. Consistency in movement, sleep, and nutrition. Yes, I have heard about cinnamon, Ree, but I can't remember what I read about cinnamon. By the way, I am trained in nutrition, but it's only a nutrition coach status, advanced diploma in nutrition coaching. So I'm not like really detailed in my nutrition knowledge. That's why I'm going, yeah, I've heard about cinnamon, but I'm not quite sure why. Stress regulation is also really important in terms of blood glucose regulation. Excellent, Trisha. I was going to talk about that. Movement, immediate. Well, it's not exactly immediate, Trisha. I think the research is that if we move within about an hour, I think was the studies that I've read of eating, that's really helpful for blood glucose regulation. But really interestingly, it does not have to be high intensity exercise. It is actually, I'll type it in the chat and see if anyone knows what this is. See if you know what this stands for. I'm sure some of you will. You can say it out loud because it's a lot of words to type. It's good news is the great thing. So it stands for non-exercise activated thermogenesis. Oh yeah, nerdy. So that is the production of heat and energy in the body from movement that is not what we call exercise. So an example of NEAT would be cleaning the kitchen, walking up and down a stairs, walking the dog around the block at an easy pace. So it's the kind of movement people just kind of who get on with their day would be doing. So even just 15 minutes is what the studies seem to be pointing at. 15 minutes of NEAT is helpful for blood glucose regulation. This is the thing that made me stop sitting on the sofa straight after dinner, but having dinner, then cleaning the kitchen and then sitting on the sofa. Not a major clean, tidying the table, loading the dishwasher, that kind of thing. made me resent it less. I haven't heard about heel drops specifically, apart from for bone density. And are you saying that heel drops move the lymphatic system? A lot of things move the lymphatic system. I'm sure they would certainly join in the job. So movement in general, I'm going to go through some of these just to speak about them a little bit more. I said I would mention the fasting. So eating at regular intervals and eating macro balanced foods is really important for blood glucose regulation. Macros are the big nutrients. So here, I'll type it out. Actually, I'll just keep talking. Sorry, Meg. See, this is what I do. I bring myself on tangents and I forget what I was saying. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the macros. So macro means big. So macronutrients are the things you can see on your plate. The three main macronutrients are protein, complex carbohydrates, so carbohydrates that include fiber, and good fats. So good fats are the fats that break down relatively easy into DHA and EPA, DHA. The omega-3s are what you will have heard of. Omega-3 has already been broken down when you eat oily fish. So you are eating the things that the brain and loads of bits of your body need. And it helps to essentially kind of slow down the digestion. So I'll just get a little bit nerdy. If you think about eating just a simple carbohydrate, so a carbohydrate is a chain, a linking up of a number of different glucose molecules. Glucose being the single molecule that goes into the bloodstream and creates blood glucose changes. If you have white sugar, that is two glucose modules, not modules, two glucose, I've forgotten that word again, I said it a second ago, molecules stuck together. And that is a combination that tastes sweet. When you add another glucose module, which is maybe your white flour, your white bread, it doesn't taste sweet anymore, which is really weird, but it is 3 glucose. I keep thinking module, molecules. And when you consume that, it's easier for the digestive system to break them apart into their individual molecules to be consumed into the bloodstream. When you throw fiber and protein and good fats into the mix, the digestive system's going, ooh, we have a lot of work to do here. So it basically just means slower absorption. Thank you for writing that in. I know I always get confused between activated or activity, and I used to say both interchangeably. I think it's activated. What else came in? Oh, yes. So about fasting. If it in an ideal situation, we should be eating at regular intervals so that blood glucose doesn't get a plummet, because when blood glucose plummets, we get a cortisol spike. It's a stress response in the body. Stress is good, but not always, and not over and over again. And what that cortisol spike does, and I'm sure many of you will recognize it, is that it creates a fast glucose release craving. And we crave the white bread or the sugar, because we know that will quickly boost our blood glucose. So fasting, which a lot of people take on for weight loss, can have the counter effect of creating a blood glucose drop and a panic in the system that creates really heavy cravings for eating a lot of simple carbohydrates. And that then creates this bigger blood glucose roller coaster. Then we get insulin resistance, which is when the glucose may be remaining high, and then it no longer, the pancreas is producing so much insulin that the body goes, I can't even see, let alone respond to this insulin. I don't know what's going on. And it just starts sort of ignoring the insulin, which is trying to regulate you. And that's called insulin resistance. It's not, you're not able to let it do its job. And that's when blood glucose gets more destabilized. And then we get into type 2 diabetes, which has all these risks. So fasting, it depends. It depends on your individual body's response. And just a word on fasting, intermittent fasting, for example, if your client is thinking of doing intermittent fasting, a few questions to ask them might be, are you obsessing about your last meal? Are you eating a lot at your last meal because you're scared about the fasting window? Are you desperate for your morning meal when it comes around? And or do you have a history of eating disorder? There is evidence to suggest that intermittent fasting can increase the likelihood of developing an eating disorder or disordered eating. And that obviously is going to create a huge amount of stress in the body, which is going to dysregulate glucose. So that's why I just wanted to speak a little bit about fasting. It is just like Diana was saying last week, none of this nervous system regulating works for you if it doesn't regulate you. If you don't like deep breathing, it's not going to have the effect on the nervous system that we're hoping for. And so if fasting is dysregulating you, it's going to have too many negative effects to have the beneficial effects outweigh those negatives. Sleep, very important for blood glucose regulation. Rest if you can't sleep. And one thing that you can spell with 4 letters that has research behind it that shows that it helps the reduction of the development of insulin resistance into type 2 diabetes, i.e. helps regulate blood glucose. What might you all be quite interested in? That's a 4-letter word. I can see you. Yay! Yoga. The best 4-letter word in the world. So there's such convincing evidence for yoga supporting blood glucose that in India they have rolled out, there's a huge epidemic of type 2 diabetes in India, and they have rolled out a program of educating yoga teachers or training yoga teachers in outlying villages all around the country to offer yoga to the community in order to help to quash this epidemic of type 2 diabetes. So that's pretty amazing. So you're already, if you're a yoga teacher or indeed a movement teacher, you're already supporting blood glucose regulation. Another thing that gets in the way of ATP is poor breathing. So lack of oxygenation that may be caused by decreased lung function. So there is some research that doesn't seem to be widely spoken about. It's not a large amount of research. I don't know why the menopause world isn't interested in it. That shows that in menopause we can have decreased lung function. It may be one of the reasons why women in perimenopause find that their beloved running starts to become exhausting. They may have run for years. So obviously we have some good research into pranayama helping to increase lung function, and thereby we would expect it is going to help to increase oxygenation. So what I think is great about that is that just within yoga, without making much change, we already are supporting ATP production. But we may be, again and again, we'll come back to this, lacking the variety and activation that is also so good for ATP and lots of other brain areas. How does the brain feel the most safe? Diana is not allowed to answer this. What makes the brain feel safest? you kind of probably learnt about it with Diana. That's a really woolly way of saying that, because I can't quite remember if she said these exact words. But it's basically clear input. So the clearer the input to the brain, the more adaptable it feels it is to a wide range of circumstances. And that is, I mean, you can type anything you like now, Diana, or even unmute. But my sense is that that is a really major chief desire of the brain, if not the most. Is it, Diana? Is it the key number one thing?
Well, I imagine it's different for everybody, but yeah, there's a huge amount of research and just how the nervous system functions in that three-part loop. The inputs are what come in, the 11 million bits of information come in, the brain has to process that and decide what to do next. And so that's the how can I predict what is going to happen to make me safest, and it's going to produce an output, and the outputs are a big variety. You know, pain is an output, restricted movement is an output, and often people are like, oh, I have these problems, and so we can start to see the problems, like, oh, I have insulin resistance, that's an output of the brain. Or I have chronic pain, that is an output of the brain. So in this training, we're really looking at, yeah, like clearing, like what are the inputs coming in? And exactly as you said, the clearer the inputs, the better data your brain is going to have, regardless of what your lived experience is, right? Because there's the whole trauma piece. So trauma resolution can be a huge support for better outputs as well. But even if you're not doing any trauma resolution, just clearing up the information coming into your system can help your brain have better predictions. And when the brain can better predict what is all this information coming in, it's going to feel more confident and feel safer that it can make the next best move. So
Exactly. That's it, isn't it? That what's my next best move is so important to the brain. And one of the things that Diana put so beautifully, I don't know if you said this in your recording, Diana, but it struck me the last at one point during our last training, that your nervous system's job is to keep you alive for the next few moments. And that is dependent on it knowing what's the next best move. And I think that's one of the things I loved about how Diana put that, was that you can also then say to yourself, well, actually, if I'm still here now, my nervous system is doing a great job. Let's not give out to our nervous system too much. But yeah, that it's what's my next best move in real time. Like, is it the best thing for me to have bent my knee and put my hands on my knee? Something in my brain made me do that and thought it was a good move. All the way to, is it best for me to leave this Zoom call now because I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed or whatever? So when we have unclear input, we get that sort of survival response, which is the sympathetic nervous system. And we have not only the classic things of pain and all of that, but we have fatigue, we have fear of our environment, we have potential oversensitivity to our environment when the input isn't clear. It's like it's trying to figure out things out in maybe a much more hair trigger way. We might then reduce our movement because we feel unsure about where we are in space. Our brain doesn't know where we are. And when we have decreased movement, we have compromised health. In some people, there can be cognition affected by those kinds of sympathetic survival responses when we don't have that clear input. And there's some reports of poor motor performance when we don't have clear input. So much of what Diana and I are doing is about clear input, and mine then is maybe more about challenging the brain within clear input. And what we'll be doing this evening, a couple of little fun drills, will be about making them going from them being difficult to being clear, so that the brain wants things to go from being difficult to being clear. It wants to help you work out a weird coordination challenge. And it will, if you keep at it, it will help you figure it out. Before we move on to the more of the Alzheimer's piece, I just wanted to, I don't know, some of you might have worked in rehab. Somebody mentioned working in stroke rehab in one of my trainings. I don't know if it was one of you here or on one of my other groups, but in stroke rehab, eye exercises are very often used to help improve motor control and sensory or visual processing, which are very different issues, by the way. And they do use smooth pursuits, which Diana will be teaching you, which is like tracking an object with your eyes. They use near and far eye exercises, which is where you look at something close, something far. They use convergence, which we'll also do, which is bringing the eyes into the center. They also in stroke rehab do, in order to help people with processing, they do word searches. You know, those things where you have a big page with loads and loads of letters and you have to link them up and find words that are going backwards and forwards and diagonally and stuff. And they even, you know, depending on the person in the rehab, even just searching for all the B's. So even just searching for all the specific letters. The reason I'm telling you this extra stuff, because the eye exercises will come later, and what I'm saying about why I'm talking about this is not that you and I, after doing this, would be rehabbing people who've had a stroke, but if those are used in stroke rehab, and they're also used in some other, you know, important circumstances for the brain by neurologists, if they can help someone who's had a stroke to recover lost capabilities, then it's got to be that they are stimulating neurons. And the key thing for prevention of Alzheimer's, or one of the key things for prevention of Alzheimer's dementia, is stimulus to neurons. So what I want to be clear is that the work Diana and I are doing, okay, maybe I should just speak for myself here, Diana, and you can tell me if it's the same for you. It is based on, it is evidence-based. There is evidence and use of what Diana does, but mine is evidence-based in a slightly different way. It's knowing the things that help with prevention of Alzheimer's dementia, like learning to dance the foxtrot. And then I'm extrapolating from that. Okay, so if learning complex dance movements helps to prevent cognitive decline, how can we bring the foxtrot into yoga? So how can we make yoga more like learning a new dance? Obviously, we're not going to foxtrot in the yoga studio. I wouldn't know how, but it's about taking the stuff that already is evidenced and making something similar in a yoga class. So while what we're doing is evidence-based, just a note for you, you can't go then advertising and saying, I'm teaching you yoga to prevent Alzheimer's. You can say this is a yoga class which prioritizes tools that may help to support cognitive decline. Just be careful of, you know, false claims or unfounded claims. But what I want to say again is that it's not a woo-woo sort of, ooh, this is kind of a nice idea. It's very much a construction out of what is scientifically known and how we can bring that into a yoga practice. So things that you might like to add entirely depending on your cohort. Let's say you teach yoga in a senior center or something. You could bring word searches, hidden picture puzzles, even something like I Spy, that kind of thing can be really good for helping the processing centers of the brain. eye exercises in particular seem to be very good for sparking neuroplasticity, for rewiring. Most people who've had a stroke that relearn movement, etc., they learn it in a different part of their brain. It's not necessarily about recovery of the bit that got damaged. It's about different parts learning. That's pretty amazing. I don't know if there's any statistics on people who have had a stroke and done rehab, and then their risk of Alzheimer's dementia. It'd be quite interesting if they'd done the rehab, would they have less risk of Alzheimer's dementia? But I don't know if anybody's done that study. I'm rabbiting on a lot, and I do want to give you time to do some chatting together. And I'm thinking I do still need to tell you things before I can let you do that. Okay, before I go into Alzheimer's risk factors, some of which, by the way, were in the Brain Through Life video, I'm going to tell you that one of the things that has in yoga that has been seen to reduce cognitive decline in people in the early stages of Alzheimer's dementia, and therefore we might guess that if they had done it before, it might help to prevent. But again, we don't know that for sure. We know that it helps reduce cognitive decline in people in the early stages of dementia, so much so, sorry, I haven't said what it is yet, Kirtan Kriya. Satanama, Satanama, then whispering Satanama, Satanama, and then thinking it, whispering it, singing it. So much so that the Alzheimer's societies, which would be a really great place for you, by the way, to look up established facts, the osteoporosis societies, the menopause societies, the Alzheimer's societies, they're great resources for you to just check if what you're reading on social media or something has any kind of basis and is accepted in the fields of in groups of people who work in these fields. But they include Kirtan Kriya as an evidence-based practice to reduce cognitive decline. So it is certainly well worth considering using. What they've discovered about Kirtan Kriya is that there is increased neurotransmitter production, which means more neural connections. Remember, a neurotransmitter is what helps the signal go from neuron to neuron. There is more brain blood flow. We've already talked about blood flow to the brain being really important. More brain blood flow, particularly at centers of the brain related to memory. There is an increase in immune boosting cell activity in people who do Kirtan Kriya. Improved sleep, which is immensely important. I didn't go into that. I hopefully will get time to go into sleep a little bit more at a later point. Improved spiritual well-being, which is also a positive quality that helps reduce Alzheimer's risk. And improved clarity of purpose, which is interesting because there is a whole point in reducing Alzheimer's risk around having a purpose in life. So people who are kind of sidelined, sent into a care home, don't have any role, will be more likely to have cognitive decline and Alzheimer's dementia than people who have a role in life. And we see in people doing Kirtan Kriya decreased stress, decreased cortisol, and decreased inflammatory markers. And inflammation is another risk factor for Alzheimer's. So what I think I will do, because I would like to give us a break from me talking, is we will do a 6-minute Kirtan Kriya. I will not sing the whole time because I just don't think that works over Zoom. What I will do though is give you a timer, because this is the most annoying thing about doing Kirtan Kriya yourself, is trying to know when the time is up. So I will do a timer and of 2 minutes. No, is that going to be 12? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh yeah, no, 1 minute, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 1 minute. The first minute you will be singing. I will give you the tune again in a sec. First minute you're singing. The second minute you are whispering. The third and fourth minute you are thinking it, but you're continuing the finger movements. The fifth minute you are whispering again, and the sixth minute you are singing again. The chant is Satanama. So, ha 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 ha, little ladder. And the finger movement is index finger, middle finger, ring finger, little finger. You'll be singing Satanama for a minute, whispering Satanama for a minute, and continuing with the hand movements for 2 minutes, back to whispering, and then back to singing Satanama. I'm going to read because I don't, this is not something I know well, some of the little details about the significance of the sounds and the fingers. So forgive me for just reading something that I took from an expert in, I guess, Kundalini. So the moment of the chanting, or the minute of the chanting, is about you as a human and your connection to the world, which I quite like about the chanting because we can be heard in the singing. The whisper is about connection to the self, longing and belonging. The silent is about connection to the infinite and to the divine, if that is something that speaks to you. Sa refers to the beginning, birth. Ta refers to our life, our existence. Na refers to death or change, transformation, and Ma to rebirth. The index finger refers to knowledge, the second to wisdom, the third to energy, and the fourth to communication. I thought we were going to get into the koshas there, but I don't think communication is in there in the koshas. So this doesn't matter entirely. And I'm not aware that in the studies that the people who were doing the Kirtan Kriya knew the meanings. So if you want to get yourselves cozy, comfy for a little break, you're welcome to work with eyes closed or open. I recommend that you make any adjustments to be physically comfortable for 6 minutes. I will not be looking at you because I don't want you to be having a sense that I am watching you meditate. I will be looking at my timer. And I will start by saying sing. When 1 minute has elapsed, I will simply say whisper. Then I will say silence. Then after 2 minutes, I will say whisper. And then I will say sing. And then I will say let that go or whatever. So Sata, well, your own note, that was quite high. Satanama, whatever you want. Find your little note and begin singing. And whisper. and silence. And whisper. And sing. And then letting that go. And breathing. And noticing what you notice. And when you feel ready, if your eyes are closed, perhaps open them with a few blinks. And just take a moment to look around the space you're in. Let your eyes wander around until you see something that your eyes are interested to look at for a little longer. It could be a light switch, the leaves of a plant, a corner of a wall. And just look at that really objectively. Its colors and textures, light and shade, the angles, contrasts. And then looking around again, find something maybe mundane. So it's not about looking for prettiness. It's just looking at something with a little more gentle interest than you might ordinarily, and no judgment. So a cobweb is not a problem. It's a substance, it's a movement, it's a texture, a color. And as you look around another time and find one more thing to get curious about, notice how you feel in your body. And in particular, if there's anything that feels okay or pleasant in your body right now. And then offer yourself a little Sunday morning yawn stretch. Oh. And I would like to offer you all a 2-minute comfort break. Water in, water out, or a cuddle of your doggy if you're Dana. Oh my God. So interesting that you wanted to cuddle your doggy. So 2-minute comfort break until 12 or maybe 13 past the hour. We didn't do a mobility assessment last week, did we, Diana? And did you do it in the recording? Okay. So Diana will be doing some of this stuff with you, but with eye exercises, but I'm going to do it with physical activation stuff to help to, so, okay, let me start again. Stress is a big deal for Alzheimer's dementia risk, and we can use movement in a lot of ways to help to deactivate. And we're going to do a neurological challenge. Those of you who've done my yoga for menopause training will have done this. You'll be like, I know this, which is really nice. I love learning things again because you kind of feel like you're getting a handle on them. This is going to show you how challenging the brain can support the nervous system by the proof of the pudding being increased mobility. And we need to think about the brain on two levels, is deactivating and activating. And somehow now we are going to activate the brain and deactivate the nervous system at the same time, which is pretty bonkers. So we're going to do, excuse me, a mobility test or a range of motion test, then a little brain challenge, and then a mobility range of motion test again. So Diana uses some particular ones and I use some others. And the ones we're going to use is if you could sit or stand in a position that you will absolutely definitely be able to remember where you were, so that when we do the test afterwards, you'll see whether there's a change or not. And we're simply going to turn our head to one side, but don't try and stretch it. Just go as far as your head turns today without any kind of yogic intention. Just where would I naturally stop? And have a look and see, what can I see? What's the level of discomfort or otherwise? And then go the other side and just see what's my range of motion there. And also, how's the comfort? What can I see easily? What can I see all the way if I bring my eyeballs all the way to the corner and come back from that? And then this is one that Diana never uses, and it can be tricky. And if you find jaw stuff a bit scary, don't do this one. But we stack 3 knuckles vertically on top of each other. You're going to be holding your little finger with your thumb to stop it getting in the way. And you're going to try and fit those 3 big knuckles in the middle, not these back ones and not these front ones, but these guys in between your teeth vertically. And see how rubbish or good you are at it. And take it away. I would normally, but because I'm in this awkward teaching situation, I'm not going to do it. Normally, I would get you to also do a little mobility range of motion test for touching your toes. If anybody wants to stand up and do that now, go ahead. You stand up. And as you go towards the floor, don't stretch like a yogi. Just how far do you happen to go today without trying to push, where the body immediately says just its first thing where it says, no, I'm done now, thanks very much, and take note and come back up. One of your pieces of homework is going to be to find a coordination challenge and to teach it. This is the first coordination challenge that I'm going to teach you, and you can also build it up to do feet as well as hands. Take your dominant hand in front of you, so whichever one you naturally use for writing, etc., and flap up and down with the wrist. You don't have to stretch your arm out, and you can be relaxed in your shoulder. I'm just going to take my camera further away. And then your other hand is going to circle. Neither of them are ever going to stop moving, and the flappy hand is never going to change what it's doing. If you feel that's kind of doable, reverse the circle of the non-dominant hand and keep flapping the dominant. Try and be accurate. Try and get it happening. And it's a wrist movement, really. And then try figures of 8 with the non-dominant hand. And you want to make them as rounded and smooth as possible so that they are different from the flappy hand. If you're interested, these circular movements are very stimulating to the cerebellum. Ah! You want to feel the cogs of your brain. Did I ask you to reverse your figure of 8? Reverse it if you can. Keep flapping. And then can you write your name in the air with the non-dominant hand? So you're adding a cognitive challenge as well as a movement challenge. And then you could, if you're really brilliant at it, or if you want to keep working on this, you could do the alphabet. You could add a cognitive load by doing the alphabet backwards. All sorts of things you could do. And then let that go. And hop up and do your touching your toe test. And see if anything changes. And then when you're ready, come back and do the jaw one if you did it. I could eat a whole apple at once. And then make sure you're in the same spot and do the neck test. Oh my God. And just give us a wave if you had any improvement. Yeah, that's so interesting. This seems to be the case with Diana's work as well. About 80% of people seem to have improved mobility. Oh, you did eyes closed and eyes opened, interestingly. Anybody got any ideas why the hell that might have happened for those of you who had increased range of motion? You're muted. I think you're talking but you're muted. Yeah, and why does the brain feel safer, Sarah, or anybody? Yes, working on input. Also working on stacking. Ooh, we already knows the name. Also working on, yes, it understands itself better. Also working on challenges makes it know that your intention is to keep it on its toes so that if there is a new challenge, it can meet it. So that new challenge might be the cave is on fire, or it's not a tiger anymore, it's a tiger with wings, you know. So it's the adaptive nature of our brains is helping us survive. So it's always down to survival. And then Hillary's mentioning focus on a specific task. So that's the other thing. It may be that it is also so difficult as to be meditative, but it's also very quick. So I would wonder whether that helps that quickly. I don't know. You know, we only did about what, a minute and a half of that movement. So the likelihood is that it feels more confident when you're challenging it, and that's in a way good enough for me, that it offers some sort of nervous system support. And the great thing is that whatever neurological drills we're going to add, if they don't overwhelm us, we know that they're, even if they're difficult, they're not necessarily going to be dysregulating to the nervous system. How might you know, and some of you, you know, we haven't really covered this, I suppose, just yet. How might you know if it was not good for you? Getting frustrated, range of motion got worse, yes. Pain, Harinder, yes.
Other types of body sensations like jittery, nervousness.
Yes, exactly. Sort of feelings of anxiety and jitteriness and nervousness. Dizziness, Caroline, exactly. That's a big one. And there's another physical sensation of nervous system overload, one that you might have experienced in a car. Nausea, Hillary, exactly. So if someone gets pain, decreased range of motion, nausea, dizziness, distress of any sort, then that's too much. And actually, I remembered, I think I talked to you, Diana, once, because I had a client or a student who feels sick no matter what neuro drill I do with them, whether it's eyes, coordination, she feels nauseated. And I got on to Diana and said, what am I going to do? And she was saying, just get her to imagine the complex task. So that's what we do. And she doesn't feel sick. And you never know. Maybe eventually, if she did it, it's only a class-based thing, but maybe if she did it regularly enough, she might increase her tolerance for that challenge.
Yeah.
So,
I
yes,
did
who's
share
that?
one. This is me. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
Diana.
I just wanted to expand on that and also affirm that we'll be going into all of this more in the future. This is like such a great intro to this. And I also want to say sometimes the dizziness may not mean too much, it may mean challenged. So there's other things we might want to look at. So if somebody is experiencing a little dizziness, but then their range of motion has improved, we might be hitting a really great zone where they're being challenged, but not too much. Versus somebody who gets dizzy, they're like, I'm getting a little dizzy, and then their range of motion decreases. That's a sure sign it was too much for their nervous system. So sometimes little things pop in where you're like, oh, there's a sign of stress, but as Neva's saying, like our brain actually likes being challenged. We're trying to find the right load for them. And so sometimes discomfort is at a good zone, and sometimes it's too much. So there's often you want to have a couple factors to look at. So just throwing that out there.
That is brilliant. Thank you. I hadn't thought of that at all. So yes, not running away from a challenge because there is one of those symptoms. If there is improvement in others, that's a really good point. And as Diana said, there's going to be loads more on this. So don't feel like this is the only moment you're going to get to hear about this whole idea of dosage and challenge and stuff. Oh gosh, yes, Sarah, doing it daily, no harm at all. Anything to stimulate the brain on a daily basis would be fabulous. And Diana will talk about dosage of eye exercises as well. And then Trish asked, was can we start this slower? Absolutely. You can start with just the flapping and one circle and do it for a shorter amount of time. The point of doing the range of motion exercise is just, this is partly a little trick to help people recognize the connection between stimulus and nervous system via mobility. I wouldn't always do a range of motion test before I do a neurological drill in class, by any means would I. That's sort of to get them on board, and then we do them as, okay, we're going to just do a neuro drill today. So the range of motion is in a way a little tricky trickster to help people go, ooh, this is exciting. Diana would use it more regularly one-to-one, I think, but for in a using neurological drills to stimulate the brain context, in a class context, it's unnecessary to do that. But obviously you're looking for people not to feel miserable when they're doing it. I hope that's kind of clear. Just going to share a little bit here. So I'm going to kind of share, oh no, I won't share this slide. I'll share the next one, so ignore this. I am, where is it? There, it's come now. Going to talk about some of the things that can help support Alzheimer's dementia, even though I haven't gone into the list of risk factors and things that can support it, but just a few little, just a visual break for you, I guess. So cognitive load and creates cognitive reserve. Cognitive reserve is kind of like we've done the work and we have this bank of cognitive capability that we don't necessarily use all the time. And they have seen that cognitive reserve helps to reduce the symptoms of Alzheimer's dementia in people with the physiological changes of Alzheimer's dementia. So if you have the atrophy of the brain, the amyloid plaques that are indicative of Alzheimer's, the physiological changes of Alzheimer's, it does not mean you are going to get symptoms. This is the incredible thing. And one of the things that can reduce the likelihood of symptoms is cognitive reserve. And we can get cognitive reserve by imposing cognitive load. So this is the need for the brain to be exercised. Just like being physically sedentary is not good for our muscles and bones, so is sedentariness in learning. So as I said in the first session, even just taking this course is going to be beneficial for your future brain health. You are adding to your cognitive reserve right now. As well as cognitive challenges helping us, and that flapping is a cognitive challenge in a way, especially once we added the spelling your name and stuff as well. But it's a conscious output that needs concentration. As well as those challenges helping us feel safer, they also help grow more neurological connections, potentially reducing the physical thing of atrophy, which is the shrinking. We can support cognitive reserve by things like Sudoku and crosswords and jigsaw puzzles and word games. We can also support cognitive reserve by taking classes, reading, studying a new language, learning a new skill, go back to university if you can afford it or you can be bothered. By creative activities that can help induce cognitive reserve, like painting, writing, playing music, dancing. Social interaction is really important for cognitive reserve and brain health anyway. Engaging in discussions, going to lectures, joining groups, so that you're just broadening your horizons within that social interaction. And physical activity is not so much for cognitive reserve, but can improve blood flow to the brain and help protect against atrophy. Particularly aerobic exercise seems to be particularly good for the brain. Now, this picture is trying to indicate to you how samey yoga can be. So we do our same poses again and again and again and again and again. And then I just loved this image of the one bird flying off, and then this, I think I added the flowering brain there to indicate that when you choose some variety, the brain will blossom. So yoga can be samey, it can be very monocolor when it comes to heart rate as well. So physically and mentally, it can be a little bit less than exciting. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop again and ask you to either type in or verbally suggest to me how we could shake up a yoga class and make it less samey. Any ideas? That's very interesting. Just start with the left side first. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. And here am I doing all this work. Prop usage, yeah. Crossing midline exercises, yes. We'll talk about that in a minute. Change pace, repetitions, and sequencing. Different variations of a known pose, yes, absolutely. Hillary's really on the money there. Changing pace is really good for the brain, that they have to follow different rhythms that you dictate. So sometimes the neuro stuff is very dictatey. I'm a real fan of letting people do their own things, but some of the neuro stuff is about, come on now, this. So changing pace, like getting them into a repetitive movement, like something like leg raises. If you ever do leg raises, you're lying on the floor and you bring a leg up and a leg down. And saying, you know, let's bring this leg up now and bring it down, and then up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. We do that. I do that sometimes with saccades, which are some of the eye exercises that Diana's going to teach, do guiding the rhythm, and they have to follow the rhythm, is a really good stimulus for a particular part of the brain. Yes, changing sequencing is very important, so that the order in which you do things. Incorporate different movement modalities. Yes, for sure. Unless you get in trouble with your studio owner who like is dictatorial. But I would totally, you know me, Diana, totally incorporate different movement modalities. Yes, imagery and metaphors. Excellent, Jasmine. So it's just making the brain go, ooh, she said that. Wow. And it actually reminds me of Diana's beautiful exercise, which Diana, I stole for some other thing I was teaching this week, yesterday, which was your beautiful A to Z of adjectives to improve the interoceptive vocabulary. So that kind of thing. Sensory input, absolutely, Jasmine, with permission from people. You know, are they okay with smells? Are they okay with different sensory input? Yeah, working on a particular body part and getting into detail there, which is going to help with that mapping in the brain. Yes, Caroline, so the balancing poses with eye and head movement, which would be very different to just our classic ones. Yes, body scanning, Trisha, to really get people tuned into the brain itself, or the body brain connection, and just wake things up. Here's a funny thing. I have oh, Diana, yes. Make the front of the studio space the back of the studio space. So this is a big one. Orientating people differently in the room. That's a really big one. And even taking that outside to stimulate your brain. If you always walk in that direction around your block, when you go for a walk around the block, walk the opposite way. If you're walking the same walk, the same time of day, the sun's in the same place, you're seeing all the shadows and lines on the same side every time. Walk it the opposite way. Your brain's going, ooh, this is all new. The same. shake up the use of the space. Your people will hate you for it. Ask them to change mat positions, things like that, but you stand in a different place. The rebounder. Oh, nice. Yeah, lovely. Do you have rebounders in your studio, Saffron? Where is she? Can't see you. There you are.
I'm here. Sorry, no, I don't have a rebounder, but when we stand up first, I just get everyone to softly bounce.
Oh, just yes, bouncing.
And I get that
Yeah,
idea, so that a lot of people came back and said they found it very
lovely.
useful for neuropathy and a few other things. Yeah, just to
Yeah,
get
it's a nice bit of fascia stimulus as well, and just a different kind of movement. Yeah, lovely. So that's what I'm going to be teaching you, of course, a lot. One of my favorite ones is teaching a few variations of movement, teaching a movement that's a few movements that are very, very similar, and then giving them each a number, and then just calling out the number. Do this movement, do number 2, number 1, number 3. In the sequences, I've given you an example, I think, of me teaching a sequence and giving, or a few moves and giving numbers. They'll be in the videos. But what I do sometimes as well, this is when I'm, with a group that I know very well and I know they're on board with this, is I might teach a sequence or a few moves, give them numbers 1, 2, and 3, and then we go ahead and do the more of the class, and then I might suddenly go 1, and they all have to jump down and remember what the hell number 1 was, and then we do some more, and I might go 3, and they go and do number 3. There's a limit to people's patience with the neurology stuff when they come to a yoga class. So you have to know that they're on board with this, and I wouldn't teach it, all the time, or some of them would be very much conducive to being done in a yoga pose. Today in Trikonasana, we're going to do an eye exercise, whereas sometimes I'll say we're going to do a real brainy session this week. Another really great one I enjoy is teaching a sequence of postures on one side and having them remember it to do themselves on the other side. One of the things that is really important, though, is to keep people feeling safe. So if you teach a sequence on one side, tell them that they're going to have to remember it so that they get the chance to commit it to memory. But once they start moving, trying to do it on the other side, watch. And when they start to look lost, you go ahead and do the posture, so that they don't feel completely at sea and silly. You give them a moment to try and remember it, and if they look like that it just hasn't gone in, jump in and help, please do. Yeah, I think that's the kind of main differences that are the main things that I would do, mixed with what I've said and what you guys have said. So somebody mentioned stacking. Stacking is the art of adding a difficulty on top of another difficulty. And giving homework is really helpful. So the toothbrush challenge is my favorite one, where you can really stack it. So you start by telling people to go home and learn. Your cat's going crazy, Diana, getting lots of stimulus. That's fun. Tell them to go home and learn to brush their teeth with their quote unquote wrong hand, the hand they never use. And then how do you stack that? They brush their teeth with the wrong hand until they get used to it. Then they do it while standing on their non-dominant foot, balancing on non-dominant foot. Then they might do it with their eyes closed. So you can figure out home-based stuff for people to do that they can stack to their heart's content. And it's a bit like I start doing reps with a 2 kg dumbbell, and then I need to move up to 4 kg, and then I need to move up, etc., etc. So eventually you get so good at something that you need to stack it. So adding another challenge on top of a challenge is called stacking. Another example of stacking is following your rhythm in a rhythmic movement or saccades, changing the rhythm while they're doing it. And some of the foot drills that we're now going to do, which are a bit like dancing and a bit of a pain in the bum. So what I'm going to do with you now is teach you 2 coordination challenges. And these are not the same as the coordination challenges in the coordination sequence. So you'll get a sense of how many different things you can find. And in between now and your practicum, you might as well start looking for a coordination challenge that is not what I'm teaching today, not what's in the sequence, that you can bring and teach at your practicum. It's possibly my favorite bit of the practicum is seeing what mad stuff you're going to come home with, come back with. So this one, we're going to stand up. You don't need to have me see you unless you want to give me a good laugh. And I just want to let you know that when I taught this one, both of these actually on the last training, everybody was better than me. And I was disgusted. Let me just get a bit of a better view. So I'm actually going to pin myself so I won't be able to see you because I'm so tiny I can't even see if I'm in the shot because I don't know this room for working on. Oh, I did the wrong thing. Sorry, folks. You can pin me, by the way, if you want to see me better. The dog often gets really angry if I'm not angry, but freaked out when I dance. So it might not go so well. Okay. So I think one of the reasons everyone was so brilliant at this last time was because I taught it in too much detail. So I'm going to challenge you a tiny bit more and not teach it in quite such detail. So you're going to take your right foot and tap it forward, together, and out to the side. Forward, together, out to the side. Forward, together, out to the side, and forward, together, out to the side. And then you are going to do the same on the left. Tap front, together, side, front, together, side, front, together, side. Arms wise, just give your legs a rest. You're going to do elbow out, elbow down, and elbow down across. Elbow out, down, across, out, down, across. Other arm, out, down, across, out, down, across. We're going to do right arm and right leg. So you're going to do foot forward, elbow out, foot together, elbow down, foot out, arm across. Go ahead and try that yourself. With rhythm. Already gone. And stop. And go ahead and do the other side, which you haven't practiced. Really focus and you might eventually get it. Don't watch me because I'm getting it wrong. Partly because I'm teaching as well as doing. And then stop. And then you're going to try and swap sides each time. So right, left, right, left. With rhythm. Oh. And let it go. And then you're going to try and do it with my rhythm. So I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to change rhythm. I'm sometimes going to pause. So let's see if you can manage. If you're feeling really dodgy already, let it go. When you're ready, you can swap sides as I'm counting, or you can just do one side. So I'm just saying 1, 2, and 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And let it go. and come back and tell me if, trying to remove pin, there we go. Tell me anyone who found it easy. Give me a wave if you found it easy. Yeah. Only one of you. Interesting. Do you happen, Rebecca, to be a dancer?
Yeah, I
Yes.
dance competitively.
Yeah. Very interesting. Not surprised. So, did any yogis find it reasonably easy or easy at all? Yeah, so a couple of you found it not so bad, but hands up who found it difficult. Yeah. And of those of you who found it difficult, hands up those of you who are primarily yogis is your primary movement. Yeah. So I'm not saying yoga's bad, but I'm not saying yoga's bad, but can you see how for people like for Rebecca, who's a dancer, it was easy. So there may be things that Rebecca, if she wasn't also a yogi, are you also a yogi, Rebecca? No.
No,
So
and
there'll be things in.
I was just gonna say, like, I went back to dance. So I danced growing up, and then I took a really big break, and I went back because I ended up with neurological Lyme disease and lost total function of my body. So dance has been my rehab, and it's been amazing and helps with things like this.
Amazing. That's gorgeous. Thank you. But what I think is also interesting is, or possible, is that Rebecca might be challenged by some of what you yogis can do very easily. And that's not the point, is not to say yoga's rubbish and you must dance. It's to say that we atrophy if we just do one thing. So shake it up a bit, and something like a coordinational challenge will help. We are going to do more of that in other contexts and in the sequence that I need you to have a look at. Do I have time? I do. I have a quick bit of time for another little share. So don't worry, as I'm saying, there's going to be more of this. This is such a just intros. So this is the wonderful thing that I know that's a very, very wordy slide, but the images are important too. Vestibular training has been seen to improve cognitive function. But what's really important is that it is not doing tree pose on a cozy yoga floor with no disturbance and calm music and candles. It must incorporate static and dynamic balances. It must include changes in the base of support. So you'll see the middle ones there. I'm standing on a crumpled up mat, or you could do it on a yoga block or anything that's just slightly wobbly. It requires changes of the height of your center of gravity, which is great. Something like Warrior 3 might be more beneficial than tree pose, for example. And also it's really alongside the base of support potentially being less even, the texture is really important. Maybe because it supports foot stimulus. And foot stimulus is incredibly important. I'll be talking about that tomorrow in my Yoga for Bone Health training. And this is really important in NeuroSoma yoga as well for maintaining that connection from feet to brain, because this is a huge part of how we stay safe in older life, and Alzheimer's is a disease of older life. So we're talking about what are known as comorbidities, things that are often in the same individual, may often be in the same individual. So again, I have a whole sequence of vestibular challenges in the videos that you're going to watch, but we're just going to do another one, which I stole from Diana's teacher. Well, she took it from somebody else. Diana's teacher, Missy Bunch. Take, if you have it, 2 yoga blocks or 2 small cushions. I'm going to use my daughter's slippers and pop them. I'm going to have to pin myself again so I can see. You could also use 2 chairs. 2 chairs might be better for people who might fall. And you pop the 2 items on the floor. Toby, I'm afraid you have to move. Toby, move, move, move. Come in, come in. Up, up, up. Go on, up here. Jump up. Oh my God, he's as lazy. Go on, jump up. Okay, catch your ball. Go on. So 2 objects. Sorry about that, guys. And you're putting them about, I don't know, the width of a decent width of a human apart. And find something to look at straight ahead of you. A spot on the wall or something. Ah, thank you. The infinity walk, Diana's talked about it, mentioned it there in the chat. So look at something ahead of you and walk around the objects without stopping looking at the thing that you're looking at. And you can, of course, take moments where you turn and look at your object again. And you can do backwards walking. I'm doing very badly because I'm standing on the slippers because my dog is in the way. And just try and keep your eyes fixed on an object. I'm not sure, I can't remember, Diana, if you can walk backwards in this or if you're supposed to sort of turn and only walk forwards. So basically we're just training a vision thing with movement and proprioception. And the vision practice is called the vestibulo-ocular reflex, where our eyes are able to fixate on a spot, but our head moves in relation to our eyes, which is something only humans can do. So your vestibular system is getting a big challenge here without having to do some of the kind of more dramatic rolling practices and head turning practices that can make some people feel unstable. You can come back now and have a little breather. Very important after vestibular challenges to rest the brain, the head in stillness. Because if you have created disturbance in the semicircular canals of the fluids in the semicircular canals, they just need time to settle. So maybe take a few deep breaths. And I'm going to share, I think, one more slide, if it's the right one. Yeah, so these are some examples of vestibular drills that you can do. Rolling, turning on the spot, going upside down, the bouncing that Saffron was talking about, balance in general, for sure, especially if someone's a bit wobbly, might not be that stimulating if they're balancing really still, and moving with eyes closed. Now, I do say welcome to the vestibular sun salutation, but I'm slightly wondering if I might, will I do that now? Sorry, folks, let me give, yeah. I have a lot more that I intended to get through. So yes, I'm going to wait to do the vestibular sun salutation. And I am going to talk about the different regions. So it's interesting, or maybe a bit nerdy, but I think interesting to share a little bit about how we can stimulate those particular regions that I mentioned that you learned about in the first lecture about the frontal, parietal, temporal, occipital, and cerebellum, the 4 lobes and the cerebellum. We will be learning a lot of these with Diana, the horizontal saccades, anti-saccades. Saccades, just briefly, are direct eye movements from a point to a point. So they're linear, they're not smooth. And anti-saccades are when you tell someone to look in a different direction than they are actually supposed to look. So I tell you to look right, but you look left. I tell you to look up, but you're to look down. Moving to the rhythm for the saccades or some of the stuff that we talked about already can help to stimulate the frontal lobe, an exercise that involves a rhythm within your yoga class. And short-term memory challenges, which I've talked about, like giving them a sequence on one side and making them remember it for the other side. So that's stimulating the frontal lobe, which is particularly involved in memory, which is obviously a big concern for people as the years go by. It's also very important for our emotional and our personality. So if you have people with frontal lobe dementia, they will have personality changes. The parietal lobe, spatial reasoning, being able to see where things are in space. So that might be stimulated by the idea of going into a different orientation in your yoga studio. Sensory attention, somebody talked about that already, and Diana will talk about that a bit more. Fine motor skills, finger tapping, kirtan kriya. Cognitive training, a lot of what we've just been talking about. The temporal lobe is a big deal here. You may or may not know, because I haven't gone into the risk factors, that hearing loss or deafness is a risk factor for Alzheimer's dementia. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in this, as well as the menopause piece, because women are much more prone, but I have hearing impairment. And if you use hearing aids, that can reduce that risk factor back, not totally back to where it would be without hearing issues, but it's very important to use your hearing aids, or to seek hearing aids if you have hearing loss. Rhythmic movement, just that, again, stuff that we're doing in our yoga classes. And it's nice because rhythmic movement is also something that fascia likes, going in and out of different shapes. Fascia really likes that. Or our dancing stuff, our coordinational challenges and all that kind of stuff. Puzzles, it seems to specifically stimulate the temporal lobe, but also just giving yourself help to remember things. Post-it notes and stuff and reminders apparently are not crutches that make you less good at something. They're actually really helpful to keep the brain ticking over. And really interestingly, there's some research that shows that chewing gum is really stimulating for the temporal lobe. Diana would probably know why, but no time to talk about that right now. The VOR, the thing we were just doing with our eyes, where the eyes are looking at one spot and our head happens to be moving. Diana, I think, will teach that as a specific eye exercise. If she doesn't, I can, but we happened to do that in that infinity walk and any other vision exercises. And then the cerebellum, there's a lot in the sequence for the non-dominant sequences in the videos, and I would like you to obviously look at those. The spiral movements we did on the underactive side in that hand challenge, and spiral and flowing movements are particularly stimulating for the cerebellum. I will also be asking you for your homework, your practicum, to come and teach us also a non-dominant task. And that can be something like brushing your teeth. So getting creative about thinking about, where can I use my non-dominant hand, and little bits of homework that I could give to my students for stimulating the cerebellum. Sorry for the rush there. Always happens, doesn't it, Diana? That we end up, well, I end up anyway, with more to say, but we'll find a way to get to it. So it is just past the time, but I don't want to go without offering any questions that you might have, or space for any questions that you might have. This session will be posted on the video things just as soon as it uploads. So by probably the end of tonight. Oh, is this our week for the quiz, Diana? Yeah, so there is a quiz on the website that we would like you to take. I'm actually going to go in there and just change a couple of the settings. So if you don't mind waiting for tomorrow, that would be great, but no big deal if you want to get to it tonight. There's just some responses in it that I want to change. Jasmine, what is your quick question?
Do you mind if I unmute myself?
Oh, you're already unmuted.
Oh, perfect. Then if this is not a quick question, I'm totally fine if we save it for another time. But specifically also going through Deanna's workbook, which is amazing, by the way, with the assessments that you might or might not try with clients or in a class, is it a curious piece of material that we should pay attention to if one area improves after the exercise and one does not? Like, for example, when I assess my neck before working with a specific cranial nerve and my shoulder, and my neck improves in range of motion, but my shoulder gets a little worse, is this something I should be sort of noting down as giving some particular information to me, or not? I'm
I'm gonna
super
let
curious. Yeah.
it's a very curious question. I'm gonna let Diana
Mhm.
answer that.
Yeah, I love that question. And when it is a bit of a longer answer, but one, yes, I think definitely take notes. And when I go over teaching eye exercises, I'm gonna go over a lot about what assessments are. And range of motion is such a great one,
Mm.
and it can be challenging for this reason, including like sometimes it's well, anyway, without getting into spoilers for future sessions and to
Okay.
save, yeah, we are
Yeah,
going to go
so
over that.
so
Exactly.
you'll
Perfect.
address it at some point.
I
Yeah,
will. Absolutely.
Okay.
great.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, thanks, Diana. I would just say that, Meg, I'm totally up for taking your question. If anybody needs to go, please do, and thank you, and we'll see you next week. But Meg, go ahead with your question.
I'm wondering if you can give me a general definition or maybe some examples of what our brain determines as unclear inputs.
Diana, would you like, well, yeah.
Yes. One example, and again, I'll go into this a bit more in the pain science lecture, which is next week, but for example, um, eh, with the homunculus, so let's say, the homunculus, the sensory homunculus is quite large in the hands. So if an unclear map might be, oh, I don't have a lot of sensation on my hand. Therefore, the inputs coming in through my hand, which are quite large in the brain's map, is fuzzy. So if I can't feel my hand, my brain, which has a large real estate dedicated to the hand, is not getting clear inputs through the hand. So sometimes doing sensory work can help clear up the proprioceptive map of the hand to the brain, which then leads to safer predictions. Because if the brain can see the hand better, it can move the hand better, it can be more confident with, oh, I can reach out and grab this railing as I fall because I have better clarity of inputs with my hand. So that's like one example. Does that help? Or I can also give more examples.
I would theorize also that a less than embodied yoga practice might be an unclear input, by which I mean hopping into a yoga studio and throwing your body into a variety of shapes without really tuning into what the body is actually experiencing. So doing your yoga practice with an external eye, like looking at the teacher and that being your main guide rather than actually what is my body feeling. But I don't know if that counts as unclear input, because maybe the body is managing that, the body and the brain are managing that, and it's just a sort of ego thing. But would that make sense to you, Diana? Sort of throwing your body around the place without much care?
I think
Not
yes,
care.
I hear what you're saying, and as far as the specificity on is the inputs, somebody who has like your body still might be receiving, like your brain might still be receiving clear inputs if you have a great proprioceptive map of your body and your brain, even if you've never done yoga. But somebody who's never lunged before and their brain is like, what is this new movement I'm doing? I've never moved my hip this way. So my brain has a blurry map of my hip in this particular movement. And on top of that, I'm not even paying attention to my body. I'm focusing on the teacher. So these are like multiple ways in which it's a blurry or unclear input.
Mhm.
Does that, I think that might specify it a bit more. And yeah, we'll go over all of this more next week too. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, you can email questions during the week and we'll do our best. And I think Dan is going to hopefully give you all another Discord. Oh no, you write to her if you need a Discord link. Is that right? Yeah, okay. Marvelous.